Thank you, Shrikant. And now we'll get into the very first plenary fireside conversation between Atul Batra, Chair, NASSCOM Product Council and CTO, Manthan Systems, and Narendra Bhandari, GM, DX Developer Experiences at Microsoft. Atul is a graduate of Mangalore University and has done his master's in computer science at the Louisiana State University. Prior to this current role, he has worked at Sun Microsystems, Motorola, and Yahoo. Narendra is a master's in computer science at Arizona State University. He's worked at Intel Technology India for 23 years as the Director Asia Pacific Software and Services Group. He was awarded the highest honor for the group's Intel Achievement Award for delivering high-performance graphics software. And now I'm sure you're going to relish this very intense, very conversational discussion between Narendra and Atul. So I'm going to hand over the mic to them.
Hello. Thank you so much, Devika. And good morning to all of you, and welcome to NPC Hyderabad. It's really a great pleasure and a honor, I would say, to be here this morning. Very, very excited. I'm based out of Bangalore, and I flew in yesterday night. And every time I'm here, I see such great energy, enthusiasm for products here. And I think every time it's just getting bigger and bigger. So very, very excited to be here. So today, what we thought we would do is we would talk about a very important topic around, build a winning product, right? And I work for Manthan Systems, of course, as Devika mentioned, and I'm joined here by Narendra from Microsoft. Microsoft needs no introduction. Narendra?
Thank you, Atul. Absolutely delighted to be here, and the journey from the airport to the hotel was traffic-free. Coming from Bangalore, that's a positive, so it really helps. The energy around building products has that graph has, changed, sloped dramatically over the last 8 to 10 years. But there is this constant conversation in the market as to what do we do, how do we change it. So we'll talk a little bit about how to do that and get some conversation going.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to kick it off with a little bit of background. I know Devika introduced both of us, but we'll give you a little bit of perspective of our individual product journeys and what framed our perspectives. And we'll talk about a couple of themes as we go along. So like I said, I work for Manthan Systems. We're a big data analytics company. I've been there about 4 years. And today, you can say we're one of the leading analytics providers on the cloud. So we offer packaged analytics applications on the cloud, do business in 23 some countries. And I'll talk about where we are in our journey. And basically, my career, if I look at it, has been a bit of a mix, if I can use that word. Spent about 17 years in the US, mostly in the Bay Area, working for a bunch of companies, and worked about 6, 7 years in India now. So I've been both sides of the pond, so learned a couple of things. The other thing is I've had the opportunity to work a lot on the enterprise, but a little bit of consumer as well. So I started off the Bay Area at Sun Microsystems, early 90s, or I should say mid 90s, where enterprise Java was just getting going. So I worked very closely with the Java team and figuring out how to bring that into the enterprise, and then eventually consumer browser and so on. Built a e-commerce platform before the .com bubble burst, and then worked on a bunch of middleware products, what is now called software infrastructure. This was way back, Narendra, in the time of SOA and web services, when that was a fancy buzzword. And then had an interesting twist, moved to a company called Good Technology, which was really a pioneer in terms of taking mobility to the enterprise. We were, in fact, one of the market leaders. We had 50% of the Fortune 100 in terms of offering, enterprise applications on the mobile, and iOS was just getting started around that time, and so on. So that was a very interesting time in the industry. And then, we got sold to another company, and I moved back, and then Manthan is another, enterprise play, of course. On the consumer side, worked at Yahoo, building a product called vertical intent search. So basically, all the search engines are now getting deeply personalized, as you may know. And so that was very interesting. And then I worked with a bunch of startups throughout my career, advisory, consulting, so on. So been exposed to early stage startups, mid-stage, growth stage companies like, Manthan or Good Technology, and of course a lot of large companies as well. So it's been a very interesting journey and a lot of, humble lessons learned, I would say. What about you, Narendra?
Awesome. Well, speak for yourself. I'm a whole lot younger. I came back 15 years ago, 17 years ago, back to India. So, started out in engineering. I'm a computer science background. From a product development perspective, started probably the first product I worked on was as a research associate with IIT Madras under Professor Junjunwala, trying to build something very rudimentary of how to send telegrams without doing the Morse code. And there was this innovation called keyboard. Remember, guys, keyboard, which you could take a wire and attach it to a PC. So they said, why don't we use the keyboard and send telegrams instead of doing the, dot, dot, on the tab. So a friend of mine and I, both of us, tried to build the hardware and software, designed it, from the sort of PCB lines till the software, and, did this project for teleprinters, Hindustan teleprinters in those days. And, obviously they took it to market. Joined Intel, in fact worked for C-Dot for a while doing some high performance computing systems and switching systems. Joined Intel and built a lot of internal products mostly. And when I say products, these are capabilities and products used across the world within the company for chip design. On the consumer side, I've spent a lot of time on 3D graphics and gaming. Both building engines, contributing to engines, and of course working with the gaming industry. In my most recent job in the last sort of 7 to 10 years, I used to cover the gaming industry in Korea, Taiwan, Japan. For people who understand that industry, Korea and Japan probably from a usage are leading the world in terms of online gaming, even before it became popular in other parts of the globe. Last, I would say 5 to 7 years, my job takes me to startups practically every week. My focus today within the company is to take early stage startups or even pre-early stage startups and grow them to potentially Series A, Series B, maybe even further up. We don't do the investments, but figure out a way to help them grow. And today's session will try to bring some of those learnings and some examples, hopefully, to see how you could benefit from the journey of some of the others. So that's it. So actually, I do want to ask a question. Since you've built so many products, I'm a founder or an aspiring founder. I obviously am a very good engineer or a very good designer. How do I know I'm getting closer to a winning product? Or what should be the journey? What should be the thought process? You want to start with that?
So great question, Narendra. Actually, this question is very dear to my heart. I talked about my individual journey, right? Work for a lot of companies. So one thing that, that's sort of ingrained in me, and I literally take it to bed every day when I think about products and, product businesses, I'll summarize it in one line. The ability for companies to produce compelling innovation far, far exceeds the ability to monetize it, right? And I fundamentally believe if you look at the history of, technology and computing and businesses, that have got started and, risen and then sort of dropped off, right? We do live in a very tough business, right? And they say technology has the shelf life of a banana, right? For a reason. Yeah. So basically, when I look at the whole product game, right? I look at two large buckets, right? One is obviously the product itself, right? What are you building? Whom are you building it for? Why are you building it? What need is it solving? So on, right? So basically, product market fit and use cases and requirements and so on. The second bucket, which I think doesn't get enough attention, especially when we look at young entrepreneurs, people starting off companies for the first time, is around monetization, right? How the heck will I make money, right? So I think that we really need to start thinking of that as a fundamental second leg of the stool or the chair, if you will, because if you have not thought about that early on, what's your business model, how will you make money, and we'll talk about some go-to-market and, how to do partnerships and which geographies to potentially go after, right, depending on what kind of business you are, your enterprise or consumer, right? I think that needs to be thought from day zero. What is your monetization strategy? How will you make money? In fact, my hunch is, sort of my philosophy is, fundraising, how large your organization is, how big your team is. These are all ingredients to the eventual meal, right? And eventually, I mean, when you eat a good meal, you don't think about the ingredients, right? So basically, what is your revenue strategy? I think that's a very, very important question. I think in India, obviously, it's been a learning curve. As across the world, I saw the same thing in the Bay Area as well, right? And today, I think the ecosystem is doing much better. There's a lot more mentorship. There are people who are further along. There's, like I said, a lot of growth stage companies. There are late stage companies. We have a lot of, expertise coming from the likes of, the Microsofts, the Intels, the, Accentures, all the large companies, right? But I fundamentally think, revenue is a very, very important thing. And I can talk about, what we've done at Manthan. So, we've also evolved as a product company, but we were very clear that, data and analytics would be a very big thing eventually. And, we thought and worked hard around our business models and partnership models and so on, which we'll get into. What do you think, Narendra?
So I think here, the way I think about this, and your point about knowing your customer, whom you're addressing, is very critical. Sometimes I start thinking of as, what is your market? And the analogy in my head is, it's like, are you chasing a sandstorm, sand dunes in the desert and trying to build something there? Or are you trying to build something for a place like Hyderabad, which has very, very solid, rock solid sort of foundation? Let's elaborate on that. In a shifting sands scenario, when your market is changing rapidly, one example in my mind which comes to, in the industry I used to work for was gaming industry, right? The shelf life of a game sometimes used to be like a Hollywood movie, right, or a Bollywood movie, where you spend tons of money, high quality production, some, AAA games cost $20–30 million, and you build that, and the shelf life can potentially drop off very quickly, or the trend can change very quickly, right? Some of the games last a whole lot longer. 12–18 months is a trend, and you're completely like you're in a whole new genre sometimes. Versus trying to build products and capabilities for potentially an enterprise, right, or a government, where you don't have those dramatic shifts in technologies, or those dramatic shifts in usage patterns. Technologies, of course, will change, but on usage patterns. And hence, you want to start thinking, what kind of a customer base or usage base are you targeting? Is the usage like a sand dune, which was there last night, but when you went back in the morning, the sand dune has shifted, right? So what are you shooting at? That's sort of one thing. As you sort of build a product, and this has been said a million times, and we'll probably say this again, which is focus on your market. But as you focus on your market and customer, what is really, really, really your differentiator, right? As an engineer, and having spent years and years of building code and not necessarily selling in my initial stages, I obviously felt engineering, tech, right? Tech is my differentiator. I mean, you have no idea how cool my technology is. Sure, maybe. Right? That may not be the only differentiator which will take you sort of across the pond. Some people would argue tech is fine, but my business model is the innovation, or is the differentiator, and that's sort of going to take me forward. Another school of thought is good enough technology, good enough business model, but just very simple ability to get things done, right? The classic example there is something like a WhatsApp, right? Messengers have existed, messengers potentially will exist, but tech was there, business model was free, simplicity really caused the network effect, right? And of course, demonstrating my age now, people, I don't know how many of you know ICQ, Yahoo chat, all kinds of chat things have existed, but the viral effect and the environment in which you got in was so phenomenal that they're able to scale, right? So start thinking very, very clearly in terms of what are your differentiators. Could be one, could be two, could be a combination of all three.
It's interesting, you talked about, viral products.
Yep.
I also think that, adoption is a leading indicator
Absolutely.
of potentially revenue. So I think sometimes we get very obsessed with adoption metrics, especially in the consumer business. I think it's very natural. Unless you have a footprint, you cannot monetize it. I think we need to, again, start thinking on monetization along with adoption, right? And I think if you look at our ecosystem in India, obviously there's been a lot of play on the consumer side, right? Obviously e-commerce and, food delivery and, there's a bunch of, new innovative business models coming out around consumer. Now, I think last 5-7 years, we're seeing a lot of action on the enterprise side. I mean, Zoho is a great example. Very, I would say personally, a very humble company, not very well known, hundreds of millions of dollars of SaaS revenue, no, venture capital raised, right? That was their model, right? There's so many companies I can think of that, Atlassian. How many of you have heard of Atlassian, right? Australian company now, global, team collaboration, right? How many of you know that they have no sales team, literally, zero, right? And so imagine, their top line and their bottom line, right? What that does to it. So I think there's various ways, like Narendra said, you need to be clear what your differentiation is. Is it technology? Is it your business model? Is it the use case you're solving? Or maybe all of the above?
So, Atul, question there, right? I mean, you mentioned, getting your customer base and adoption. The scenario always comes, the question always comes in, 20 years ago, when you were a technology company, at least in India, the debate used to be what percentage of services revenue versus what percentage of product revenue, right? Most of the markets used to be export, very little was India. Things have changed, right? Today, the folks sitting here, obviously, that has become relatively clear it's going to be product. But the debate still rages, which